All right, here we go. Woo, with that new intro.
New intro alert. Oh my God.
Yeah, man. I stayed up late and made that for us. I was like, if we're gonna be streaming, we gotta up our flashiness. We gotta come correct. Wake
We
people
got to be
up when they're watching.
official.
I know, right? And like, I can produce a little video on the side. So yeah, we knocked that out to look like our Instagram and social media posts. So there you go. New intro. Welcome to the half hour of horror, streaming live most weekends except for today. We're being pre-recorded. Ha! Pre-recorded this week because hey, schedules are busy. But half hour horror being streamed into the Province Theater on the Block of Horror and on YouTube, Instagram, and X. So check us out there. And as always, my co-host. Oh, hey, it's Chase. What's going on, man?
How are you doing, Aaron? First of all, that intro, absolutely incredible. Awesome work.
Thanks, man.
We have an exciting topic today. This is something that we've talked about doing like before I even became a co-host. We talked about this back when I was kind of like a how would you say it? Recurring guest?
Recurring guest.
Yeah. Recurring guest analyst. This is something we've talked about doing, and we're finally doing it. I am stoked.
Doing it. Man, and this is one of my favorite characters to talk about. It's one of the most complex of the horror characters. He is in a league of his own. We're talking about Hellraiser franchise and Pinhead. Incredible stuff. It's really interesting when you talk about him, because when you talk about like Freddy or Jason or Michael Myers, they're there for body count. They are there to hunt you down and kill you. They're there to punish you. Pinhead's motive is completely different. He's there to expand your mind. He's scary as hell because of that. Because Pinhead doesn't want to kill you out of like spite or punishment. He wants to show you the outer reaches of pleasure and pain, which is like extra unique for a horror genre villain. And it sets him out above anybody else because he doesn't fit into the mold of anything. And based on The Hellbound Heart by Clive Barker, which is a really short, tiny book. If you guys haven't read it, you should.
I haven't read it, but I know it's only like 110 pages.
Real short.
It's really short.
And followed by a sequel called The Scarlet Letters, a whole bunch of comic books, and like 11 movies. So let's get into it. Where do we start? Where did you first fall into Pinhead? Where did you see him? Did it start with the movies? Did you see him somewhere else? What was your introduction to the Cenobite King?
So I didn't see the movie until I was a teenager, but as a kid going to the video store, browsing to the video store, just his look was just always so unique. Just shaved head like me now, man with just nails jabbed into his head. It was all, and just pale skin, always very terrifying. So by the time I saw it as a teenager, I really got to find out what it was about. And the thing that makes Pinhead unique is now he's such an icon in the horror genre and the horror community. And he's put up there with slashers, like you said, Jason, Freddy, Chucky, Michael. But his first two movies really weren't slashers. They were more how would you say, erotic body horror?
Absolutely. Very taboo. Like, it's just dealing in the horror of taboo, horror of things that shouldn't be seen or talked about. And that's the brilliance of Clive Barker. Clive Barker is one of the best horror authors of his time. I put him on par with H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King. You know, Stephen King writes great, fun novels. I love Stephen King. But to me, Clive Barker is standing on the shoulders of like H.P. Lovecraft. When he creates lore, he creates lore. When he creates a novel, he knows how to do that thing. It's like And then I saw something that drove me mad. And it's really hard to do that in a book. It's even harder to do that in television. But he is so good at writing about insanity, writing about horror. One of his anthology books, Books of Blood, is so good and full of so many fantastic stories. And I love Clive Barker. I've always been a fan of his. And, Pinhead being probably his most well-known story is just great. I mean, I saw it in high school, probably my senior year, and it was one of the movies that scared me. Like, I literally was like, oh, whoa. And you have some of the best practical effects of the era with the return of Frank gooping out of the floor. I love it. I love it so much. It's one of my favorites because it's also just a solid movie. Not cheesy. It's not campy. It's just solid, fun, and terrifying. And the first one is directed by Clive Barker. And they never let him do much after that, which is too bad because this movie is a banger. It's so good front to back. So good. Just one of the best horror films, one of the best from the 80s, some of the best characters. Kirsty Cotton is a fantastic final girl. We see her in the first two films and then in the later comic books. Julia, what a villain in her.
Yeah.
Freaky Uncle Frank with no skin on. Like, yes. Give that to me. And then the star Pumpkinhead too. That other guy, what's his name? Sean Chapman, who plays the doofy dad, who you can't help but
Larry.
Larry. Oh, he's great. Such a crazy movie. There's a lot going on here though, because it's an infidelity story. I think at its forefront, you have Larry and Julia are having marriage problems, and she deals with it by killing people.
And it was revealed that the movie starts off with Larry and Julia, I think, moving into their mother's home. It's not explicitly stated, but I think it's very much they moved to England. Like, this movie's very British. He actually makes a reference in that movie because, again, Julia still has a very strong British accent. He goes, well, we're back in your home turf now. So they go to the room, they go to the house, just find it trash since his brother Frank had been missing, had been living there. Julia finds some stuff of Frank's upstairs, and it's revealed she had an affair before her and Larry got married.
Yeah. And Frank is Frank's a freak, man. Frank literally is so damn thirsty, and he can't find anybody to match his freak. So he went to the ends of the earth, and we get a tease of it at the beginning of the movie where this guy says, "What's your pleasure?" And he buys the cube, he buys the puzzle box, and it turns out Frank got sucked into the Hellworld. And when Larry cuts his hand on a nail moving in, blood drips on the floor. Frank resurrects in one of the most gloriously goopy, slimy, nasty moments in cinema history, the return of Frank Cotton. I don't think there's anything that compares to that. When his bones raise out of the floor, it's a lot of reverse photography, just tons of slime, and then you got this guy running around with no skin on, and the makeup is just so good, so freaky, and he tries to rekindle this affair with Julia, and she is down. She's like, I'll match that freak. You're like, what? No, so freaky. And then, of course, because he's a creep, Uncle Frank's skeeving on their daughter. Well, I guess her stepdaughter, which is so creepy.
That's his niece. That's your niece, bro.
It's me, Uncle Frank.
And something about this practical effects, a lot of it. So I actually own 2 copies of this movie at home.
Really?
I own it on VHS, and I also own it on Arrow Video. Did a brand new Blu-ray of it last year, and it, with a lot of horror movies from the 80s, when they add a new scan in and make it more high definition, it exposes a lot of things that I think weren't meant to be seen. Some things just don't look as good as it does in low quality VHS, but for the most part, a lot of the practical effects in this really hold up, and it looks so good. It's one of my favorite Blu-rays that I own that's in my physical media collection.
Oh, so that's awesome. I should probably get that on Blu-ray because I do love this movie and I love the look of it. All the costumes, obviously the famous like BDSM leather look going on. Incredible design. You get these great makeups because you got the Lady Cenobite, obviously Pinhead, Chatterer, Butterball, like just really cool designs. And I like each of them for different reasons, but like Chatterer, other than Pinhead, I think Chatterer is my favorite because he's just so creepy with his
Mine too.
terrifying. Yeah. And of course the lady Cenobite with her little neck split open and that head rig. I'm always like, they're so good. And you know, this movie is, like I said, it's a lens, it's a focus on taboo and, you know, dealing with infidelity, dealing with BDSM, a lot of iconography going on that just at that time especially was super off limits and freaking people out, which, you know, just makes it such a really cool space to have monsters in. We'll certainly get into it, but one of the things that I thought was smart about the reboot, remake, wherever they went in 2023, people are like, oh, they got rid of the leather, and I'm like, guys, Hot Topic made that commonplace. Like
Yeah.
leather bodices are no longer monster wear. Like anybody can wear that out, like just in public, like chokers and chains and leather. Like that's not freaky deaky anymore. That's not monster clothes.
No, you got to think this was really in the middle because when Hellraiser came out 87, right?
Yeah, 1987.
Yeah, this would have really been, and here in the United States, kind of towards the tail end of Ronald Reagan's presidency and the height of the kind of new conservative movement. MPAA was really cutting down on gore and blood and violence in a lot of movies, especially horror movies. I mean, look at the later Friday 13th movies. There's a lot of scenes that were cut down, and I think it's part 7 and Jason Takes Manhattan that are like
brutalized.
Yeah. You know, they were really cut down heavily, and I think those are considered like the two of the most bloodless of the Friday 13th movies. But yeah, this was really taboo. Of course, also it was kind of the height of the satanic panic, where that kind of culture, you know, the goth culture, heavy metal music, wearing leather, people would associate with devil worship. Now it's kind of commonplace, you know. Hot Topic and Spencer's, you can buy yourself a leather pants and shirt right now and walk out, and no one's gonna bat an eye.
No, nobody blinks at that anymore. So I think when the new one was like, we're going to do desecrated flesh, I was like, metal. That's the smartest choice you could have made. If you're not going to do the leather thing, that's smart. Whether it worked or not, I'll let people debate that. It worked for me because I thought that was really smart. This is also an era, you know, there's an AIDS panic going on, and subcultures are really under the microscope, and people were being really, really scrutinizing subcultures and the gay community, of which Clive Barker, you know, is while he's writing this book and making this movie, he's you know, discovering himself, and a lot of that is in this, and it makes it feels very personal, but it also feels very much like raging against what else was happening. You know, the producers wanted Pinhead to be cracking jokes, and I'm so glad he didn't. Like, if he was Freddy, oof.
Yeah. One thing that when I was doing my research about this, that I found out that Clive Barker, during his early years as a writer, when money was tight, he would work as a sex worker. And
really?
Hellraiser, and his work as a sex worker really inspired him to write this, plus BDSM, underground BDSM clubs. I was reading about one specifically in New York that was an underground BDSM club where they pierced each other for fun. Like,
yeah, it's like that kind of like stuff that would freak squares out. And like, yeah, I think even most people, like, getting pierced for fun seems freaky. Like, to me, that's like, oh, I'm not into needles. That would creep me out. So like, here's Pinhead covered in needles, piercing, body modification to the max. Like, that's why this is working. This is playing on body horror. This is playing on the desecration of flesh and playing on those things that were, I mean, still to this day, like when done right, is scary. And I like that he's playing with that. I've always likened it to this because I think the first movie nailed it. And the rest of the movies never quite figured something out. The Hellraiser franchise and Hellraiser's lore, much like its BDSM roots, needs rules. And the rest of the movies didn't know what the rules were. They didn't know, how do you become a Cenobite? What are the rules? What does the box do? I mean, are we are they hurting people? Are they killing people? Are they actually showing people pleasure? What is the deal with it? And I always felt that something that was missing from the subsequent films, and you touched on this with him working in like underground sort of sex trade and underground BDSM clubs in New York. He saw something through a keyhole that shook him. He saw something he wasn't ready to see. And I think anybody from our generation who, that first generation who grew up on the internet, we've all been there. You clicked on a link and you saw something that freaked you out, that you were like, I wasn't ready for that. That's what Hellraiser is. That's what Hellraiser's doing, is something that is so normal in this world, in the Hellworld, in Hellraiser. Like, Pinhead's like, yeah, this totally feels great. I love all this flayed up flesh. This feels good. To us, that's weird. To him, it's normal. But to see that through the keyhole, to peep through the veil to that's where that fear lies. And to me, that's the power of the Hellraiser franchise. And the later movies, the first and the second one are doing okay, but then they really get lost in what makes it scary, why Pinhead works, what are the rules. And I think the new one did okay. They really did touch on, in a drug addict's world, you see things through the keyhole that aren't cool. It takes you to depths. And I think that was really interesting. The sequel, the second one, I think the first one has a weird ending. I think that's kind of its weakest point, is you're like, well, how did that kill them? And then she like redoes the box and shoots lightning out of there, and they die from the lightning. And that's always kind of we didn't really learn the rules, so I don't know why that works. But hey, whatever. She's safe. She wins. A dragon comes out of a fire pit. The end. We get the sequel, and I think the sequel does a lot of things really cool. How do you feel about Hellraiser 2?
Hellworld, Hellraiser 2. Yeah, I actually really love this one. I feel like it's a really good follow-up. While there are a lot of things that are tonally different than Hellraiser the original, because again, the original is very much front and forward an erotic body horror. Mm-hmm. With the second one, you get more of a fantasy element to it. You get more like, you go into the Hellworld, you see the Leviathan, you see a lot of really good stuff. But yet, when it comes to everything, because again, it was pretty much, with the exception of Clive Barker as a director, you get a lot of, there's a lot of things that stay consistent because a lot of this cast and crew came back for this. I really love how when they bring back Julia, she is definitely, before, how would you describe her in the first one? She was still a villain, but she wasn't like, Maha, I'm evil. This one, she is very much evil. Her and Dr. Chenard are definitely the villains of this movie.
She's a great villain in this movie too. And I really like her in the second one. She's the best part of it. I love that they brought her back. Coming out of the bloodstained mattress, so great. Her in her like Bride of Frankenstein garb, really great. That's super cool. I love all that stuff. But you're right. In the first one, she's like a reluctant villain. She's a villain because she's like a bored housewife. Again, it's a cheating parable. Like, the cheating just goes farther than anything. It goes beyond just sex. It gets into murder and feeding bodies to your skinned up brother-in-law. That the sequel plays more on like a Dr. Frankenstein by the way of Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very fair statement. Because again, with this one, Dr. Frankenstein is Dr. Chenard, who experiments on his more vulnerable patients. You know, it's like, I guess, the more mentally disturbed, like, really, you see his character. He brings home a mentally ill patient who believes there's skin crawling.
Yeah.
Under there's bugs crawling under his skin. Excuse me. Then he takes them to his home, to the mattress where Julia died, and gives him a blade and just like, basically, here, have at it.
Yeah,
And
get him out.
Yeah, and the man just starts like, it's gross because they show both point of perspectives. You see like kind of the real point of perspective where he's just scratching himself and he's paranoid. Then you kind of get his point of view where he just sees bugs and maggots just crawling all over him, and he just takes that razor and just goes to town on himself. And
this one was directed by the editor of the first one, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And because it is bizarrely edited, it's wildly abstract, and like you said, you don't know if what he's seeing is real or not. There's a lot of moments that's showing you unreliable perspectives, which I think is a good tone for Hellraiser to have. But
yeah,
this movie doesn't know the rules. It doesn't know it, and it's hard to say what they are. Like, why does Dr. Chenard get to be a Cenobite?
But Julia doesn't.
Yeah.
Or Frank didn't.
Yeah. Why does he get that honor? Just because he wants it? That seems like not a reason to give somebody something like that. Like, it's interesting. And then when he becomes a Cenobite, like, it's, I don't know. I always feel like that character, while he's cool and he's got the blades and stuff, but it just doesn't make sense, and it's not earned in a way that you're kind of like, why did that happen? And the movie's like, I'm not going to tell you. Do you like this new Cenobite or not? And you're like, I guess, movie, thanks.
He looks cool. Sure,
Yeah.
He looks cool.
Yeah. I mean, we get Frank back, but he's in a very muted role. Cool visuals in hell, though. Like, hey, all right.
Oh, yeah. Especially seeing the black or kind of, what would you say that? Kind of a diamond shape?
The big floating Leviathan diamond.
Yeah. The Leviathan. That looks so awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God.
Well, and something they never really touch on is like, what is the purpose of like hell? Like, is it a world of torture and pain, or, they're like angels to some, demons to others? But in any subsequent film, they're just demons. Nobody's down for the games they're playing. It's not tickle with a feather, smack you with a whip. This is like, I'm going to put hooks in your eyes and drag you through hell. And it's like, oh, I don't like, they lost sight of that sort of waffle between good and evil that I think the first one touched on. They're not evil because of the hooks and blades and pain. They're evil because they want revenge on Frank, and anybody in their way is involved with that. The second movie, Kirsty tricked them, so they're after her. The third through 11th film, they're just vengeful, evil demon spirits. They're not on that angels for some, demons for others vein.
Now, one thing I will say, with Hellbound Hellraiser 2, it does kind of keep a lot of the lore that's in the original Hellraiser. To me, the lore really gets lost, starting with Hellraiser 3, which
yeah, look, I like that shirt, man.
Thank you. Which, don't get me wrong, I really love Hellraiser 3. It's definitely up in my top of the listing of Hellraiser films. But with Hellbound Hellraiser 3, because what's the original distributor's name again? New World Pictures.
Oh yeah, they got the cool red globe logo.
Yeah.
Because
again, they went out of business by this time, so the Hellraiser franchise was picked up by Miramax, then owned by the Weinsteins. Fuck you, Weinsteins.
Yeah.
And this is when it starts to become, when people, I feel like when people like to put Pinhead in with the slashers and consider them with the slashers, I think it's because of Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth, which you do get a lot of slasher elements to it, where Pinhead, you know, he's not just this demon that's summoned because of the Lamech configuration or someone opening the Lamech configuration. You have villains like Frank and Julie and Dr. Chenard. He is the villain in this one. He's the one doing the killing.
Yeah.
And he's the one converting people to Cenobites, where in this one, his soul gets trapped in that pillar of souls, that large
the art piece.
Yeah.
It's this one's interesting. You're right. He gets trapped in the art piece. He needs blood. He convinces a club owner to spill blood on him. This is from the 1992, the era where like nightclubs were a popular thing to have in movies, or you always had to have a nightclub scene. This, you know what's interesting about this film? Often cited as having the largest body count of any horror film.
The nightclub massacre scene.
It's hard for me to agree with this, because people are like, who has the biggest body count, Jason or somebody else? And Pinhead technically does. And a lot of this is attributed to Dead Meat James doing a video where they went through and counted all the bodies they saw on the floor. But if it's already dead and you didn't see it happen, how much of it counts? And people will argue this both ways. Jason, for the longest time, was considered to have the biggest body count. It's up in the 200s, whereas Hellraiser Hell on Earth has like 400 in this movie alone, which is crazy.
With Jason, that's actually heavily debated too, because there's a scene in Jason X where a space station crashes, and I think one of the writers was like, oh, there was over 20,000 people in there, so Jason has the biggest body count. But no, like on screen though, I think it is Pinhead, because this is like you said, like 200, 300, 400 people alone in the just the nightclub scene.
And you mentioned he starts making Cenobites, and this is where it's like, if you had some rules, it would have been really helpful to know what makes the Cenobites. And because it's like, he's like, you need a camera head Cenobite? It's in the movie. You want CD spitting Jambox Cenobite? He's in the movie. Like,
you want alcohol spitting fired Cenobite? He's here too.
Yeah. The Cenobites, like, their design is cool, but why? And none of that makes any sense when, like, Butterball wasn't like, he wasn't like, it wasn't literally taking A plus B and merging them together.
No.
There was lore behind it, and I think a lot of that is kind of, I don't know, it's a weird thing, and that reeks of producer to me. That reeks of some producer being like, hey, wouldn't it cool if we jammed a camera in that guy's head? He's a camera Cenobite, and somebody's like, I guess. There's some really cool stuff here. I love the backstory of Pinhead in this movie. That's the best part to me.
Yeah, where you get Elliot Spencer, who has kind of now said that his good side and his evil side, which was Pinhead, have split, and now his evil side, which is Pinhead, is now on the loose. He is coming in the dreams of our main protagonist, Joey. Coming in her dreams saying, hey, help stop my evil side. Let's put an end to him. Then you also have the I guess one of the antagonists, JP Monroe, the wealthy nightclub owner, who is all about lust and pleasure. Fun story though. Do you know the name of the gallery that JP Monroe picked up the Pillar of Souls from?
I don't. What is it?
It is called the Pyramid Gallery. So Hellraiser 3, little fun fact, Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth was filmed in my home state of North Carolina and the Greensboro and Winston-Salem area. I went to a concert with my father beginning of this year. He got tickets to see Jefferson Airplane, called me. I was like, hey, Chase, let's go see. No, Jefferson Starship. All the Jeffersons and the I mix them up. The Jefferson Starship. called me up and said, Chase, I got tickets. Let's go. So I was like, okay, I'll go with you. Only on one condition. I want to see the Pyramid Gallery from Hellraiser 3. He was like, okay, we'll do it. Because all the recent pictures I've seen, it still has the decal and the logo up on the window. So we get there, we type in the address. They took the decal and the logo off, which was so disappointing.
Oh,
And the thing is, 2 doors down from it is a nightclub. So I was originally just going to take a picture of it anyway. So, but again, drunk Southerners standing in line to get to a nightclub, probably already have a belly full of liquor. And my dad was like, Chase, just go out, just get a picture. I'm like, no. It's like, I don't want to get my ass kicked by some drunk asshole.
yeah. What are you taking a picture of? He's like, yeah, I'm good, man. Yeah. That's cool. It's still there. I didn't know they filmed it in North Carolina. That's awesome, man. It's funny. Yeah, it's funny how Pinhead comes about. There's a lot of weird choices in this one, but overall, this is still a fun movie. Like, it's desperately trying to self-sabotage itself. It really is doing all the wrong things, but for some reason, it all works in the context of itself and is worth your time. It's definitely not building on the lore. It's kind of spitting on it at this point, but at the end of the day, hey, Pinhead says some cool lines in this one. And I love it when he goes into the church and the glass is shattering and everything, the fire's going. Like, there's some really great imagery in this one. Even him trapped in the cool tower box thing is cool. Yeah. Like, there's all sorts of stuff.
One of my favorite Pinhead lines is when JP Monroe brings some random girl from his nightclub up to his apartment that's upstairs in the nightclub to have sex with her.
Not creepy at all.
Not creepy at all. After they're done, they get in an argument and Pinhead grabs her and devours her. And JP Monroe goes, Jesus Christ. And he goes, not quite.
Pinhead, like, and this is the first time we do start getting some one-liners from Pinhead. Like, when he locks everybody in the nightclub, he spits some stuff, and like in the church, like he has some gallows humor that he likes to throw out, which it gets worse later on, but it's not the classic "we have such sights to show you," which I love the first one. Jesus wept. That last line from Frank Cotton, so good.
So good. And then, of course, we get to the very next one, which Hellraiser 4 Bloodline.
AKA Hellraiser in space, yo.
Hellraiser. Not only Hellraiser in space, Hellraiser in the 19th or 18th century,
space
Hellraiser modern day, and Hellraiser in space. So you get 3 different kinds of Hellraisers here.
This to me is the last good one, and this one isn't that good, but this one has some great ideas in it, and it's way better than you'd think Hellraiser in space would ever be. It really has some interesting plot lines in it, none of which come to a great conclusion. None of the Cenobites are super memorable, but I like Hellraiser in space, and I love seeing where the lament configuration comes from, and I think that is a cool storyline that we deserve to see, and they do pull that off.
One character I actually do enjoy in Hellraiser in space is the kind of new co-lead villain, Angelique, who is introduced in the 18th, 17th, one of the earlier the century parts, the period piece part, where she is a prostitute taken by a man who had ordered the making of the lament configuration.
Right.
He uses her as sacrifice, and she comes back. Demon enters her body, and she comes back to life.
Interesting enough, we don't know why. They don't explain it why, but
no, they don't.
Interesting twist. We also get Hellraiser dogs in this one, which are very weird for no reason. Like, why? What? Why now? Like, why not?
Hellraiser twins.
Yeah,
can join together.
There's a lot of that. Just not sure why. friggin' Adam Scott's in it as a greasy dude from the Victorian era. The lady Cenobite in this, I love how her skull is open and she's got the hooks that go to her shoulders. The makeup in this one is pretty incredible. I think that is one of its highlights. Is I think the makeup and the costumes in this one really do work. A giant lament configuration space station. I mean, I don't know. This one is to me the last of like what was worth checking out until later, but this it's not great. Not gonna lie, it's not great.
It's one of those movies for me. It's not a good movie, but it's not a great movie, but you can sit back and watch it, kill an hour and a half, and just have some dumb fun watching it and laughing at it, and also get to kind of look at some of the cool practical effects that are in it. For me, it's just one of those I can just sit down, turn my mind off, and just try not to think too hard about it. But yeah, there are a lot of cool things about it. And this, of course, would be the last one to be released theatrically because it bombed at the box office. So yeah, you know what? It's fun for what it is. If you just want to watch some dumb, stupid fun for an hour and a half, watch Hellraiser Bloodlines. It's not the worst thing you'll watch. It's definitely not the worst entry in the franchise, but
yeah, that's the thing. This isn't the worst. Kevin Yeager directed this, who did the makeup for Nightmare on Elm Street 2. This makeup job here. He did a lot of the puppetry and special effects for the Child's Play franchise. Famous makeup artist, but like he really wishes that there was a director's cut of this because he's like, man, there was a much better version, and they chopped it down and made it really not what he had envisioned, because it's really ambitious. The thing I will give them credit for is like wildly ambitious for mixing sci-fi and gothic horror and all this stuff into just a weird
movie.
place. Yeah.
And he took his name off the credits. Like he's not listed as he's listed under the pseudonym of Alan Smithy. For those who don't know, that was back in the day when a director did not want his name associated with the project. They would use the Alan Smithy credit to avoid their name being put on there.
It's also funny because this is the film that makes Pinhead a Disney princess, technically.
Really?
Disney bought Miramax, and the first line of films that Disney put out through the Miramax label was Hellraiser Bloodline, Scream, The Prophecy, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, and Mother's Boys. And then Lionsgate bought Miramax from Disney in the late 2000s because of the outcry that Disney basically promoted these films. And it's like, yeah, I love it. That's great.
Hey, so technically Pinhead and Michael and Ghostface are all Disney princesses.
Yeah, they can be.
That does make sense, especially watching Scream. I own that on VHS too. It has the coming soon to VHS kind of classic Disney pre-movie trailers in the VHS.
So there's one that lives in my head rent free from that Disney era. Come on, everybody, get going. There's a world of adventure waiting for you. Walt Disney and you. Dang. And it's Pooh Bear dancing along. And then it just would go through like all those old live action ones like Herbie and Blackbeard's Ghost, Pete's Dragon, the Apple Dumpling Gang, like all these, like Watcher in the Woods, all these like live action Disney movies that I don't know. I'm having a weird nostalgia flashback for Disney VHS intros. Not very Pinhead. Let's get back to Pinhead. As you mentioned, after this, it goes straight to VHS.
Or straight to hell, if you don't mind the pun.
Straight to hell, and not in a fun, cool way.
Pinhead way.
Just a shitty, boring way. Hellraiser Inferno is awful. And this is where I tried to this is where I start to fall apart, because this movie wasn't even meant to be a Hellraiser movie. This was meant to be just some other like shitty detective, like Silence of the Lambs type movie. And they were like, hey, well, let's just make the bad guy a pinhead. And then it's like, that doesn't really work. And they're like, doesn't matter, put a pinhead in it and pump this movie out. Because at this point, they're literally just making it to keep the copyright, the trademark, so they don't lose it. It doesn't revert back to Clive Barker or whoever else had the rights to make the movie. So it was pretty terrible. This one is a film noir horror with a shitty detective. The worst,
terrible.
Yeah, the worst kind of like drunk detective stereotype. And then Pinhead just shoehorned in a way. There's some lady Cenobites in this. They're kind of interesting, but at the end of the day, like very forgettable. And like, I love the idea of like a detective film noir thing going on, solving it, and then turns out that the serial killer's Pinhead. That's cool. This movie is not that.
No. This one, fun fact, was the very first film directed by Scott Derrickson, who would later kind of become horror royalty in the 2010s. And up till now, he directed Sinister.
Oh
no, did he direct Sinister?
Who?
One second, let me fact check this.
Quick to the internet.
Quick to Wikipedia. Scott Derrickson. Yes, so this was his very first film. He would later go on to direct, first film he directed. He would later go on to direct The Exorcism of Emily Rose, Sinister, Doctor Strange, and The Black Phone. And
that's cool.
Coming up next year, The Black Phone 2.
I like those movies. That's great.
Yeah.
Black Phone's fantastic. That's a good movie. Even the first Doctor Strange isn't terrible. There's some interesting things going on. Sinister is cool. Did I work on this one? I worked on one of The Exorcism of Emily Rose's, and I don't know if it's the first one or one of the later ones. It's other Exorcist movies, but yeah, when it comes to exorcism movies, that one's not terrible. Good for him. This one is a stinker, but hey, you got to get your start somewhere, right? And at least it didn't kill the franchise. I mean, Pinhead's still in it. Doug Bradley's collecting a check. Come on.
Yeah, and you said this was like one of those, it wasn't even written to be a Hellraiser movie. It was just some generic detective Silence of the Lambs 7 kind of ripoff. Isn't that the case for most of the Hellraiser straight to video movies during this time?
I think Hellseeker's also in that boat. I think Hellseeker.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is one I didn't see. I didn't see Hellseeker. I've never watched Hellseeker.
I did. I couldn't tell you a thing about it. It's basically the same movie as Inferno, except this one they bring Ashley Lawrence back as Kirsty Cotton for a very small role. Don't go out of your way to watch it. Don't go out of your way to watch the next one, Hellraiser Deader.
But wait. Does this movie have Mayhem, the guy who's in all those insurance commercials in it? Dean Winter? Wait a second.
That one's Hellseeker.
Yeah, Hellseeker.
Hellseeker
right.
has the Mayhem like me guy.
Mayhem like me. Almost worth watching just to see him get into more mayhem. Okay.
I mean, if you want to watch him be a womanizer for an hour and a half with spooky stuff occasionally happening, go for it.
I'm just going to pretend that I'm watching an insurance commercial for an hour and a half. I'm just waiting for him to be like, you don't want to get sucked into a hell world and tortured for all eternity like me? Get all stayed.
I'm a cheating husband who opened up the limit configuration.
Oh my gosh. That is hilarious that he's in this movie. Yeah. Of all the horror movies, like when I was trying to get down the deep dive, after Inferno. I just was out. I was done. So I haven't seen Hellseeker or Deader. I did watch Hell. What's the one in the video game? Hellworld.
Hellworld, the
Yeah, I watched
one.
Hellworld.
You know what? Hellworld is a terrible movie,
Terrible.
but it's worth watching for one thing, and really, this is it. It actually has a pretty good cast. You have Lance Henriksen as the party host. I think he was actually before Doug Bradley was casted as Pinhead. He was actually in consideration to play Pinhead. You get one of the very early roles of Superman himself, Henry Cavill,
Yeah.
in this. He was probably like 20 or 21 when this movie was made, but it's just interesting to see him start out. You know, you look at him now, he's a huge star now.
Yeah.
Mega
Huge.
star. And
Fucking Superman.
it's just funny to see like this big mega action star who's kind of like this big A-lister and beloved action name now start his career. One of his early career roles being in a shitty straight to video Hellraiser movie.
Shitty Hellraiser movie. This also stars Kari Payton, who is one of my favorite actors to work with. He played Ezekiel on The Walking Dead.
Nice.
He is just a great coworker. Like, he just is one of those people who shows up to set, is a great leader, and has just like the best attitude. So like, I really appreciated working with him. And when I saw that he was in this movie, I was like, I gotta watch it. And he's just having fun. There's nothing else good about this movie except for the cast. Evil goes online, but it is that like that level of like early 2000s like shitty techno cheese. It's like they're stuck inside an MMORPG. We don't even know what that word means, but we're going to make a movie about it. It's like it has no understanding of the internet, of computers. It's like we're going to hack the mainframe. It's like it's ridiculous.
You know, it's basically if you get some old Hollywood executive and be like, what do you think about gaming and the internet? This is what you get.
This
also,
is what you get.
Another actor that's in this, I know I'm going to screw up his name. So if he, for some reason, happens to be listening to this, I apologize. Christopher Jacot, Canadian actor who appeared on 4 seasons of one of my favorite horror series, Slasher, which started out as a show on Chiller. When Chiller went out of, Chiller went off the air, it got moved to Netflix. Netflix canceled it and Shudder picked it up. It is a Canadian slasher show, anthology. Each season is different, but it's kind of like American Horror Story where they use a lot of the same actors per season. Check it out. The first 3 seasons are on Netflix and the later 2 are on Slasher.
Worth it though. Like worth the time.
Oh yeah. It's so good. Not enough people talk about it. They use all Canadian actors. Again, the first 3 seasons are on Netflix. The later 2 are on Shudder. Watch it. Please watch it. Let me know what you think.
All right. Slasher. Here we go. All right. I do love those slasher TV shows that we got. I mean, I worked on MTV Scream.
Nice.
We had, I was the VFX supervisor for that. It was fun. We did some really cool stuff that I'm still proud of. It's still on my reel. That one, now, Scream Queens was fun. Like there's some good ones.
Oh yeah. Now with Scream the MTV series, I know we're getting off topic here, which you know what? Yeah. If you guys watch the Hellraiser straight to video movies, you'll understand.
yeah, seriously.
With the MTV Scream series, did you work on all 3 seasons or just the first 2 where it was first 2? Okay, before they rebooted it.
Yeah, I did the first 2 and the Halloween special.
Okay. Yeah, because I know there's like the first 2. I know it's that kind of mask.
Brandon. They call it Brandon James.
Brandon James, and then the 3rd season, which they moved to MTV, and they brought back the traditional Ghostface Brash. They brought back Roger Jackson.
It was interesting though. There was a lot of talk around why. Part of it was like, well, we want to be our own thing. We don't want to be compared to the movies. I think the reality is they wanted to capitalize on it because they don't own that mask. Fun
Yeah.
World still owns that mask. Fun World has maintained the rights to that mask. You're not allowed to show Ghostface and call it Scream at the same time
Yeah.
unless you've
Yeah.
licensed it. And I think the TV show was not trying to cross those wires.
Yeah. I own some Ghostface NECA figures.
Yeah.
And they don't have Scream on it. It says Ghostface. I have the 15-inch Mezco Mega Skull figure of Ghostface. Doesn't say Scream on it, says Ghostface. They just unleashed a new line of Ghostface Funko Pops. Doesn't say Scream, says Ghostface.
Yep. And that's because Fun World still owns the marketing rights to that costume, which on Scream's part was smart for what they were trying to do, but it doesn't work. They missed out on some marketing, but that's okay.
No.
I don't.
I
care
mean,
about,
like,
what
I'm looking at that Freddy bust behind you. I'm sure when you bought that, it said Nightmare on Elm Street, not Freddy.
They're not licensed masks though, so they don't say anything. Yeah, these are home sculpted, man. These are artists did them, and they did a phenomenal job. I mean, this one is done by a really famous mask maker who does some of the best of the best. This one is not as famous, but it's painted by one of the original makeup artists.
That's awesome. They look phenomenal.
They are so cool. I love them both. Some of my favorite pieces. I could talk about masks and memorabilia all day, but let's drag us. But we got 3 more movies. Let's drag us back on topic. Hellraiser's Revelation is a piece of trash. I think that's all I got to say about it. No, I'm not going to be mean to that movie. They tried. Doug Bradley retired, and they tried to get a new guy in there. And you got to tell this. You told me this story before about like when you first
yeah. My partner, last summer, I was like, I'm going to sit down and watch all the Hellraiser movies. And I took a weekend. I started like right after dinner on a Friday night and just kind of watched a few Friday night, watched a few all day Saturday, and then watched the last few on Sunday. My partner came in, saw the lead guy of Hellraiser Revelation. I was like, oh, he's kind of cute. Sat down and watched it. 15 minutes later, he's like, I'm sorry, I can't. This is awful.
I'm outie. They're trying to make this found footage, and it doesn't work.
No.
Hellraiser, as cute as he may be, he has such a baby face, and when you're trying to fill the shoes of Doug Bradley, it's not going to work. I'm sorry, buddy.
No. Which one was he was talking about? The character Stephen Craven, which was in later on in Once Upon a Time, the ABC series, that big ABC series. Fun fact: this has an actor named Stephen Brand, who is a Scottish actor.
Yeah,
of course. I think Hellraiser Revelation is the worst of the Hellraiser series. Stephen Brand would later get some redemption. He would go on to later star in the best Saw sequel,
Saw X. Yeah, good for him.
Good for him.
You gotta. There's times when you can redeem yourself. Yeah, this one it's really bad. And what sucks is like somebody was trying. This is somebody had an opportunity, and they were really trying to make a movie that they thought was good, and it didn't work, and that's unfortunate.
No, this was absolutely rushed, because at this time, this was also kind of made during the remake craze, where we were getting stuff like which was kind of kicked off with the 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then over the next decade, we were getting House of Wax, we were getting the Hitcher, we were getting Nightmare on Elm Street, we were getting Friday the 13th, Halloween, Prom Night. Every horror movie was getting remade. Weinstein were trying to capitalize this, but they were about to run, and their time was about to run out on getting the rights of it. So they rushed this into sequel to essentially make it an ash can copy so they could retain the rights. Filmed it, wrote it, greenlit it, wrote it, filmed it, released it, or not released it, but wrap production all within a few weeks.
It's wildly rough. There's one cool makeup in it. I to give credit where credit due, there's a few shots of a Pinhead character that has a decent looking makeup, but the costumes are terrible. Like it's just, you can tell that the budget is hurting it, and it's like I said, it's trying to mix found footage, but it can't even do found footage right. It's I'm sorry, movie, you didn't do it.
I will give this thing a little bit, and when I mean a little bit, I mean like a little bit of credit.
Half star.
It gets a half star just for this reason.
Yeah.
This is out of all the straight to video Hellraiser movies thus far. This one honestly feels like it was written to be a Hellraiser movie, because you get the use of the Lamech configuration. You get one of the characters resurrecting after being fed blood, without the skin, even though it looks terrible. You get a lot of, you get the creation of a new Cenobite. This one, I will give a smidge of credit that this one actually feels like it was written to somewhat be a Hellraiser movies, where the other ones just felt like an executive grabbed an old script he turned down, dusted it off, and said, hey, add Pinhead and the Lamech configuration and scenes of hell in pages 5, 10, 15, and 20.
Call it a day. That's shoot it. Yeah. We got to get this done by January 1st, or we don't get to make any more of these.
We're trying to make a remake, damn it.
But like, that's the thing. Like, what was the plan? Like, let somebody competent make it and make some money. They didn't care though. Like, they don't care about the property. They care about the money and the property.
Aaron, it's the Weinsteins. They never have a plan.
They don't have a plan. They don't. They really don't. 2018, we get Hellraiser Judgment. And again, this one felt like somebody trying to make a super gory Pinhead movie. And does it work? I don't know. But it has some cool moments, but none of it feels like a Hellraiser movie.
I think out of all the straight to video Hellraiser movies, this one might be the best one. I will say one of its weak points, it has like a subplot of like a generic detective police procedural noir setting, which
they took the script for Inferno, dusted that
it's like, oh, we're gonna make it two brothers, they're chasing after a serial killer. They both happen to be detectives. You get Heather Langenkamp makes a cameo in this, which is always nice to see Heather Langenkamp.
She's great. Yeah.
I will say, even though Doug Bradley does not come back, this guy is an improvement over the Pinhead from Hellraiser Revelation.
He doesn't have the baby face. This is the voice is better.
You get a cool new character, the Auditor, who's a clerk in hell who takes notes of their sins before passing them on for eternal punishment. I think that was a really cool idea.
They're trying to build lore, which these movies need. They need lore. They need rules. We need to know what the deal is. And this movie tried to do that. Again, it didn't have the budget to pull some of it off. I won't blame it all on budget, but it definitely didn't help.
You could tell this was really, this was only made for $350,000.
Well, shit, then it's better than that budget is. That's good for them. All right.
Which Hellraiser Revelation had a $300,000 budget, but I mean, for the budget they were given, and especially it being straight to video, I mean, it's not half bad. Is it a good movie? No. I mean, I would say on my scale of like half star being the worst, 5-star being a masterpiece, I give it a 2.5. It's a pretty average film.
Yeah. It's I think that's about right. But luckily it didn't stay dead forever. The rights got wrestled away finally, and in 2022 we get Hellraiser. And this to me was just, compared to the 10 films before it, this was a slam dunk. They really, to me, brought back what made the first one scary, brought back why it's scary. It told a new story. It didn't try and reboot or reimagine, or it's so easy now that we've seen how to do it wrong. I don't know, 9 times that this, here's how you don't do it 9 times in a row, that this movie did a lot of smart things. I don't think it's a perfect one, but
No.
if this is a reboot, if this is the direction you're taking it, sign me up for more. I want to see more of this.
Yeah.
Jamie Clayton does a great job as the new Hell Priest.
Yes.
Fantastic. I think that is, if you're gonna do it, don't try and be Doug Bradley. We already
No,
saw that doesn't work. She nailed it.
Jamie Clayton really made the character her own here. So one problem I do have with remakes is especially horror remakes, I feel like a lot of them try to recreate what was almost shot for shot what was in the original, but ooh, shiny new technology, new CGI. One thing I do like about this one is that it is a remake. It's a reboot. But it tells its own story. Instead, it's not about Frank, Julia, Larry, and Kirsty. It's about a young girl named Riley who is a recovering drug addict trying to get her life back together. She has a boyfriend, Trevor. Times are tough. They're having a hard time with money. He's like, hey, listen, I heard about the place I work at. I heard about this rich guy has something here that's been abandoned and left. Do you want to go check it out? And they break into his like locker bunker thingy and find the Lamech configuration. And yeah, this one really talks a lot about addiction and how it doesn't just affect you, it affects those around you as well, those close to you. And I feel like they did a fantastic job. Odessa Zion was phenomenal as Riley. I don't think she gets enough credit for her role in this because she's just fantastic.
She did a great job, and I think this movie was so smart to say what is there something that's focusing on that the first one worked on that we can take it in a new direction, and addiction is part of it. Frank Cotton is addicted to. I mean, he's obviously a sex addict. He's addicted to pleasure, and I think thrills. If you took the Hellraiser and you just touched on all sorts of different types of addiction and vice in general, you could have a really interesting thread to weave through new stories. Like if we had one that was all about gambling, the thrill of gambling, this one's about drug addiction. I think there's so many ways that you could play this that makes it interesting. I love the cube. I like seeing it work. I always loved seeing how it worked. And in the original run of films, it was very static how they made it work. And it was cool.
This one you get like it will change into like a diamond shape. It will change into like these really goofy shapes. Where before it was just like you spin the wheel at the top, whoop, whoop, boop. Like, no, this one changes shapes and it's just so phenomenal. I know this one, I've seen a lot of divisive responses to this one online, but to those who are like, oh, this movie's terrible, have you seen the previous ones?
Yeah.
Have you seen the straight to video ones? This one's a masterpiece compared to the other ones.
And it was just brilliant how it tackled how it tackled it. I love the design of the Cenobites. I give them full credit and license. If you're going to do it different, do it different. You did it way different, and it's very creepy and very cool. My only knock against it is it didn't have any of that sexual undertone, like the erotic horror that the first one had, which again,
other than a couple sex scenes, that's about it. But other than that, no, it doesn't really have the erotic undertones like the original one does. But other than a couple sex scenes, that's all you get.
It's not it, and I guess it's not its focus, and that's fine. But are you like how far away are you straying from what the Cenobites are supposed to be? But again, like I said, I think if this is the story you are telling and you're sticking to it, they did a good job doing that. And I like the hallucinations of it. The house in it reminds me of 13 Ghosts to an extent. The 2000s 13 Ghosts. It's like a puzzle in its own right, a house of traps, which is kind of cool. Man, the Cenobite design is really cool. I'm looking at some of these, and it's like the different looks of them is great. I think the story is interesting. Yeah, the characters aren't very. Go ahead.
The mask is one of my favorites. It's kind of like a headless Cenobite with just a flesh face just kind of hanging on. That one's phenomenal. The wheezing one was really freaky. Gasp.
Yeah.
Yep, Gasp. That was awesome. Yeah, the Cenobite designs are really cool. And one thing I do love about this is that
the one with the fingers, the separating fingers.
Oh yeah, and the one thing I do love about this, they didn't just try to remake the original Cenobites from the original couple films. They're like, no, we're gonna make this cooler. We're gonna have rotting flesh make up their outfits, and like their muscle and tissue are exposed. It just looks phenomenal.
Really, really cool. Oh yeah, there's a bound one. There's kind of a pregnant one. I don't know what's going on there. It's terrifying, but like good. Like the design needs to freak you out, and I think that they did a good job with that.
Even with Chatterer, like Chatterer looks awesome in this, and they make him like a Hulk because he's huge, especially the scene where he goes to attack Riley and Trevor. He's just towering. He's just like towering over them. He's just an intimidating force in this one.
I'm glad we got a version of Chatterer back, because again, that's my favorite looking one. We didn't get a Butterball back, but there is a design for it. You can see it online. They did a design, and they didn't I guess never produced it, but it's cool looking. I don't know. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with how it turned out. I was like, that's the way to bring it back on tracks. Let's get more of these. Please make more of these. I want to see Jamie Clayton be Pinhead a few more movies. Let's get her back in space. Quick.
Yeah. I know there are talks. They are in the works of developing a sequel to this. And by the way, that Butterball looks so awesome.
Would have been cool, right?
That would have been awesome.
It would have been so good. Like the movies told a lot of story. I'm looking over at my books over here, but the comics from Dark Horse continued the story from part 2 onwards. And if people haven't read them, there are so many good Hellraiser comics. They are phenomenal. Now there's 2 sets of Hellraiser comics. There's the Christy Cotton storyline, and then there's like how do I just like an anthology Tales from the Crypt storyline, where every issue is a different Hellraiser story, and they are so good. One of my favorite ones it's called Crossroads, and it's this blues guitar player, and he has this guitar, and he wants to learn. And like the story of Robert Johnson, a real blues player, is he went down to the crossroads, he sold his soul to the devil taught him how to play guitar. This one kind of redoes that, but his guitar is a lament configuration, and as he plays, the chains come out and kill everybody in the club, sucks them in, and the guitar's drinking the blood. And I was like, that is crazy. There's
awesome.
one where a guy goes in through a doorway, he goes into the cube, and then there's just a door at the hallway. He opens that one, there's a door at the hallway, and he gets lost in this like never-ending telescope of doors. It's so simple, but like brilliantly done comic books. The Christy Cotton story arc is crazy. She goes to hell, she fights Pinhead, she turns into the lady priestess Pinhead to fight him and kicks him out of hell, and he becomes human again. But then she like takes over. There's like, it's this wild, huge, epic battle of good and evil. And you can, I have it on Comixology. I read it digitally, and it's a fantastic story arc. I wish we saw those movies. It's very much stuck in the 80s in its own right, but like really fun, like really worth watching. I love those ones. Clive Barker wrote a sequel called the Scarlet Letters. I don't like where it takes Pinhead, but it's interesting. Like, it's worth reading if that's where he wanted to take his character. Great, but it's again, cool lore, and it builds it out way differently. But in this one, he's like definitively in hell and not like a separate lore world, which is interesting. But that's okay.
You know what? What would be awesome is it's been rumored for years, or HBO for years has been developing a Hellraiser series. If we can kind of get some of that anthology setting, you know, for a Hellraiser series, I'd watch that every week.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'd be tuned in.
You guys heard it on our Predator episode. If you haven't, go look that up. But I have a pitch for a Predator versus Pinhead comic book, which would be so much fun. You guys laugh, but it's not a bad idea. If you go listen to it, you'll be like, oh damn, I do want to see that.
It's a great idea. Trust me, it's a really cool idea.
It's funny, but it's like I was like, how do I wanted to come up with a plot that took two characters that there's no reason for them to ever meet and figure out how to make it work, and those were the two most opposite characters possible. And I think like, oh man, I think I made this work.
It can work.
And then whenever I talk about Hellraiser, I always got to point people in the direction of our creepypasta over on Reddit. Go find Flavortown 2 Flavor Bound, and it's somebody who solves a food puzzle, and Guy Fieri shows up as Pizza Head. And it's one of the funniest things I've ever read. It was read on Last Podcast on the Left under a creepypasta episode, but yeah, you guys gotta go read it. It's long. Otherwise, I will do a reading for you here, but it is really long but worth it. It's hysterical. So yeah, there you go. We did it, man. We got through all. I didn't think we were gonna make it through all these movies because two of them I hadn't watched, and they seem terrible. So
trust me, you don't need to watch them. Now, you know what? The way I looked at it is we did 50 years and like 10 movies of Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies for an episode, and we did it. We did 46 years and 13 movies of Halloween just a couple weeks ago, and we did it
with airplanes ripping over my head the whole time. Oh, that was brutal. But yes, we made it. We know how to move. We know how to move when we need to. Yeah, there you guys go. Hellraiser. Go back and watch the original as many times as you can, man. It is one of the best of all time, and I hold that up there, up next to these greats because of that. Like, there's no reason why he fits in their club. He's on his own level, but I think he is one of the best characters to come out of the 80s and one of the more interesting horror icons we've gotten. So I love me some Pinhead. I love all the Cenobites, but I just hope we get more. Don't stop now.
Hulu, don't stop, please.
Yeah.
We want more Jamie Clayton.
Please. Awesome stuff. Well, Chase, plugs. Let's plug away.
You can follow me on all socials. Instagram, X, Letterboxd. I'm now on Blue Sky and Threads, which I barely post on Threads, but still follow me on there anyway at Oh Hey It's Chase, listed here below.
Yeah, oh hey.
Go, and of course, catch me here every Saturday on Half Hour Horror at the Prophets Theater at the virtual world at blockofhorror.com, X, YouTube, and Instagram Live. All of them.
We got to give away some blood coin. So we got a secret word. We do this every week. If you go to the Discord, open up a ticket. I am going to put the blood coin secret password. It's Pinhead. Hey, I put it up there.
Graphic.
I did the thing.
Graphic.
Yeah, I did the thing. So I'm still learning how to use all this streaming stuff, but there we go. Bloodcoin secret word is Pinhead. So go to the Discord, open up a ticket, type in Pinhead, and get yourself some Bloodcoin. We're going to be doing some stuff with that in the world. Like Chase said, blockofhorror.com will get you in there. Yeah. Scan the code if you're watching on YouTube or something else. Join us in the world to check it out. We got some really cool events happening in the Prophets Theater coming up. We're doing more Lab Rat screenings, Red Tower screenings, just really cool stuff. We're throwing movies up in there. We'll be there on Saturdays doing Half Hour of Horror, and of course my other podcast, Launchpad Podcast. We're going to be doing some chats in there as well. You can check me out. Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube at Launchpad Pod, and our website, launchpadpod.com, for my other show, or like Chase said, every Saturday is here with the Half Hour. Thanks, everybody. It has been a pleasure. Let's see if I can figure out what buttons to press to ring out that outro.
You can do it.